Go ahead, Ricky. You can. That's fine.
And
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to a special edition of the Carolina Weather Group talking about Hurricane Michael, one of the worst storms to hit the United States in several years, and one that will certainly go down in the record books for hurricanes making landfall along the American coastline. Michael was the third strongest storm in terms of sea level pressure to make landfall in the United States, and the fourth on record strongest to make landfall on the United States in terms of wind, with 155-mile-per-hour winds at landfall when it hit areas just immediately to the east of Panama City, Florida, near Mexico Beach. Some of the images we've been seeing coming out of Mexico Beach tonight have been pretty horrific, and I fear that we probably have not seen the worst of the images yet, as some of these areas that were hit probably by larger amounts of surge are just not accessible yet. This area is very vulnerable to storm surge, and it's very vulnerable to hurricanes. And it lies in an area where strong hurricanes can and do hit, and sometimes hit without a ton of warning. That was the thing with Michael, I think, that may go down. Kind of its memory is how fast this storm really got going. 3 days ago, guys, on Sunday, we were talking about a tropical depression in the Bay of Campeche, or not Bay of Campeche, just to the east of Mexico in the Caribbean, moving north. And at that time, it was expected to be a tropical storm. Boy, today was much different.
Yeah, very true, Ricky. You waiting on me to chime in for NHC information?
Sure, go ahead. So let's talk about what the storm is doing now after it made landfall there at 155.
Okay, now what we have going on. The storm has. Let me share the screen here. The storm has started to weaken. So it was just at the last update, not this past update, the one before, 125-mile-an-hour winds, keeping it a Category 3 after landfall. Now we're down to a Category 1 with winds of 90 miles per hour. It's starting to make its way across Georgia. We're seeing that northeasterly track now at this point, and it is going to continue to head off to the northeast or north-northeast for the next few days, couple of days here, as it heads off eventually to the east-northeast across the mid-Atlantic states. You can see the effects, the outwards effects, starting to make it across the state of Georgia and even into portions of South Carolina. Now, the coastal winds have already ramped up along southern Georgia and Jekyll Island. I saw 37-mile-per-hour sustained winds earlier, gusting to 41. All the way up to Tybee Island, we're getting 27 miles per hour, gusting to 31. These winds are going to continue to increase tonight from the south, and those winds are going to spread up into South Carolina. So by the time most folks wake up along coastal South Carolina, at least to the Georgetown area, you'll be seeing some pretty strong gusty winds and some rainfall accompanying that, maybe higher gusting. Rainfall, I would say rainfall amounts still holding 2 to 4 inches in National Weather Service Charleston. That includes all the way up to Wilmington. I think they're keeping it the same, maybe 3 to 5 inches for portions of southern North Carolina. So some of that rain banding may show some really squally weather with higher gusts. And we're looking at anywhere from 25 to 35 mile per hour winds from the Weather Service. That's mainly along the immediate coast to inland. And then if you get to the Berry Island beaches, we may be looking a little bit higher than that, 35 to 45 miles per hour with gusts exceeding 50 miles per hour at times. I think the strongest period from northern Georgia through, I'd say, middle to northern South Carolina is going to be anytime between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. in the morning. And then things should start to slowly and steadily fall throughout the day as the storm lifts through South Carolina. We'll go ahead and look at the hurricane track. Now that the track has expanded all the way up to Sunday, it's really hard to sort of see what's going on here. We get down to the brass tacks on the map. Tropical storm warnings are in effect for entire coastal Georgia, entire coastal South Carolina, and almost the entire coast of North Carolina, at least up to Duck, which is just south of the Virginia-North Carolina border. Now, this only covers the coastline. So if we look inland to Columbia, GSP, even Raleigh-Durham, National Weather Service Wilmington, these inland locales, a lot of them are also under tropical storm warnings as well. So check with your local office to find out those details on what the tropical storm warning situation is for your area, because this will be a tropical storm by the time it makes it to South Carolina, and it will be packing winds outwards of, I think the last one I saw was about 145 mile per hour winds. I'll have to go to the public advisory to look that up. Let's see, 30 miles. Hurricane force winds extend 30 miles now from the center, and tropical storm force winds outwards to 160. So actually a little bit more than I thought. But that wind field is going to slowly shrink over time, and then we'll be seeing the winds dying down from south to north over time. SPC, Looks like the enhanced area was dropped. We're now in basically a slight area from southern Georgia all the way up into portions of northeastern South Carolina and northern South Carolina all the way west of Columbia. Marginal. These tornado threats, I do want to specify that the Weather Service Charleston put out a message to ambassadors earlier today. They want to specify that the tornado threats may be greater tonight into tomorrow morning. So the nocturnal phase may be where we see more tornadic activity starting to arrive along the coastline. You can see the banding already pulling up through Georgia now. And so we're going to get that threat increased overnight more so than in the day. But there is still tornado risk for tomorrow as well. And that includes a huge portion of the southeast region, not just the coastline, but further inland as well. I think with the storm track right now, we're looking at some of these areas. If we go down to Georgia, we have 35 miles per hour at Jekyll Island, sustained at 43 in gusts. We're seeing some higher periods there. Go to Tybee Island. The coastal zones are starting to come up, so 32, gust 36, and these winds are going to continue to go up the coastline. Now, inland, you'll probably feel some of these gusty winds as well. It won't be as clean, as consistent as what we may find at the coastline, but I think we're going to start seeing tropical storm force winds entering the Columbia area sometime in the early morning hours. They'll probably arrive along the coast first because of this convergence that happens to its south and east. But as we go through the day, through the morning, we'll see those winds increase across the Midlands of South Carolina, pushing up into North Carolina. The NHC does keep it as a tropical storm through this period all the way until it makes it off the coast, gets caught up along the cold front along this track, and races off to the northeast, becomes extra tropical out here in the Atlantic Ocean. So that's sort of it in a nutshell. Florida sustained some serious damages today, and I can't say enough. There's a lot of we have cell signal that is not giving us data from the weather stations down there at St. George Island, all the way to Apalachicola, all the way over to Mexico Beach. So we have, we don't have any cell comms, I don't think, for at least maybe AT&T and Verizon. Some areas may work, some areas may not. Power outages are widespread. The surge was horrible. This has been a catastrophic event. Scotty's got some information. I think we've had one death reported that we know of. Some of these areas may have flooded or been damaged so severely that we don't know yet if there's any other casualties out there. And there's certainly no way to communicate that if someone needs help, especially if the cell signals are out. So, we're, really thinking about those in Florida along the Big Bend and other portions of the Florida Panhandle and even inland where those effects really did some serious damages. We got pictures to show, guys. So I'm going to hand it back to you, Ricky.
Yeah, let's pull up a few of those images I've got here. I want to show one spot in particular, and this is going to be a tweet from James Spann. Let me get it shared. So this is going to be the flooding on St. George Island from earlier today. Let's see if I can make it bigger. I'm not sure if it'll pop up full screen here. There we go. This is storm surge. When we talk about storm surge, this is what we talk about. This is the water that comes in with a hurricane. And I can only imagine these pieces of debris you're seeing right here, either a fence or some pieces of homes that are floating around. I saw a longer form of this video earlier. There was a cooler that somehow managed to float around. That looks, I don't even know what that white thing is there in the middle. It looks like a longer piece of wood, but a lot of fence there for sure. And then in some of the video that it was shared on the Weather Channel of this exact same spot earlier tonight, it shows waves literally toppling the camera, and this camera looks like it is on the top of their home, kind of probably underneath that awning. So some serious flooding that happened here, and this is on St. George Island. And if you look at where the map was, this is Cook Street. All right, so now we're going to go over to the map, Google Street View map of St. George Island. Here's a view on the beach. There's not a whole lot of dunes there, so that water, when it came up, likely just probably completely went over the entire island here. Here's where St. George Island is, and we'll compare that to Apalachicola, and I'll see if we can get a street view down towards Cook Street here and show you what it looks like. But guys, some serious flooding that seems to have happened tonight and earlier today along some of the islands along Florida's coast. So this is some terrifying images that I don't think we've really have firmly seen yet. Some chasers tonight. Jared, let's bring you in. You've had some tweets that you saw earlier tonight about some of the damage and how significant it was. Some very well-known, respected chasers saying some serious words on social media.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a tweet here from Josh Morgerman, iCyclone. He's the kind of guy, If you see him in your town, that's your cue to evacuate. He only goes after the nasty stuff, and he's seen some of the worst. And he comes through and says it's hard to convey in words the scale of the catastrophe in Panama City. The whole city looks like a nuke was dropped on it. I'm literally shocked at the scale of the destruction. So that's from Josh Morgerman. We've got one here from Jeff Petrowski here. Let's get that out. So he's got and he's got a photo here of damage along the coast. James, if you want to punch that one up, just massive damage along the coast there. Mark Sudduth, Hurricane Track. He's known for his camera network that he places in storms, and he said that he's never seen wind damage like this from a hurricane, and it just absolutely blows the mind when you see it. So, Ricky, it's bad. I mean, when I hear chasers saying things like this, and experienced chasers saying things like this, it's bad.
James, can we pop up that picture once again from Jeff? I want to point out something here that you guys may not have noticed. That's not a home. That's a train. That's a freight train that got blown over by the magnitude of the wind earlier tonight. Or I keep saying earlier today along the Florida coast. So that's some serious wind to knock over a heavy train like that. We typically see that in stronger tornadoes and not so much hurricanes. So scary, scary images coming out of there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of course, this system not done yet. It is still moving to the north and east, so we don't want to kind of forego the threats that it's still going to pose. We've started to see some impacts along the North Carolina mountains where some of that upslope flow goes on with these systems. And Scotty, I want to bring you in because you're right smack dab in the heart of it. Earlier tonight, we saw some flood advisories, flood warnings issued, a few flash flood warnings issued. Talk about what has happened and then what you guys are expecting along the North Carolina foothills and mountains tonight as this moisture from what is Hurricane Michael moves your way.
Yeah, Ricky, today we saw an abundance of moisture move into the western North Carolina area. A lot of locations up 2 to 3 inches of rain so far today. With that, some flash flood advisories have been issued. So I'm going to screen share my screen right quick, and we'll pull up those the wording here from the Weather Service. This is talking about they just reissued the flood advisory for portions of Burke, Caldwell, McDowell, Avery County with the flood advisories. Again, a couple of roads are underwater at this moment. And I'm going to highlight those right here. The following roadways are currently underwater. Brown Mountain Beach Road, Fish Hatchery Road, and Old Johns River Road. Those are all in the Caldwell and Burke County area, and seeing some flash flooding from that. I'm also going to pull up the Johns River gauge. This is what we are watching, especially the flood advisory. This is right now, just about 30 minutes ago. This will update in the next 15 minutes or so. Our river was at 12.9 feet and it's slowly rising. So the prediction right now is for it to crest at about 14 to 15 feet. That's given we don't have any more heavy rain develop before the main line of rain moves in. So lots of locations here in western North Carolina already dealing with the flooding. Flash flood watch out for a majority of western North Carolina. I think from Asheville to the east, and there you can see the flood watches and warnings, flash flood warning up for Wilkes County, Allegheny, and Surrey County up in northern North Carolina. But again, flash flood watch out for a good portion of North Carolina, and we're expecting to see 3 to additional 4 to 5 more inches here in the western part of the state. That's Hickory, Morganton, Lenoir, Marion, up towards Wilkesboro, Statesville, Shelby, places like that, Boone, Jefferson, those locations. Then as you move into Charlotte, Greensboro, Raleigh, Fayetteville, Lumberton, Monroe, down into Columbia and Rock Hill, Greenville, South Carolina, places like that, we could see an additional 4 to 6 inches of rain as the remnants of Hurricane Michael move through the area. So as you guys know, we talked about Florence just a couple weeks ago. Location still in eastern North Carolina, kind of still experiencing some residual river flooding, and so this additional 4 to 6, maybe even 7 inches of rain moving into the area is only going to cause more issues. And I think Ricky's got some of the flood gauges pulled up there. We're going to see some of these. Here's the Tar River in Lewisburg. As you can see, the forecast is for it to be back into major flood stage over the next few days as well. So anyways, that's what the flooding potential looks like right now. I know we're getting a lot of questions about flooding, so maybe towards the end of the show we'll answer some of those questions. But again, flooding I think will be the main concern here in North Carolina, besides some of those isolated wind gusts. But another storm, thankfully, this storm is moving a lot faster than we saw with Florence. That way, we're not seeing the 10 to 15 inches of rain like we saw with Florence, more manageable. 4 to maybe even 8 inches. But Ricky, any rain right now is too much for most of North and South Carolina.
Yeah, we got a viewer. I think, Ricky, you're on mute. Either way, just something to add real quick. Jack Patterson adds, he says, "Hey, James, I'm based in Americus, Georgia tonight. The worst is coming through now. This thing is packing a major punch." So even well inland folks are starting to feel those effects now.
Let's talk about that for just a second, Shay, and then we'll jump over to some of the flooding. You and I were chatting earlier tonight about Michael's core structure and how incredible it was coming at landfall. A lot of times it seems like these systems peak before landfall, or they'll undergo eye wall replacement cycles to where their structure gets a little bit torn apart as they approach land. Boy, this one didn't do any of that. It had a amazing structure and a very strong core all the way up to landfall. And I think that was what really allowed the winds to be transported so far inland. I mean, I've seen some damage pictures 30 miles away of buildings ripped open by what looked like Cat 3, Cat 4 winds. This thing was serious as it moved onshore.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. This goes as a testament to show that every storm is different. There's no one storm that's the same, right? So we saw what happened with Harvey. We saw that it was a stalling system. Worst case scenario, strengthening as it made landfall. Opened up its eye wall, had nice core structure around it, inner eye wall really developed. It even had those mesovortices spinning around it, which we saw today. So we had basically, this is a combination of a couple different things. Number one, we were in the phase for less upper shear. So we didn't have that going on. Then we have sea surface temperatures that are plenty warm, 82 to 86 degrees. And here we are towards the middle of October. And the reason being, a lot of storms never really developed over the Gulf of Mexico to stir the waters. And the loop current, even with some of its cool water upwelling, we saw it stall just for a little bit last night, where it didn't intensify as it went over that small, cool body of water that the loop current was providing. And then once it got past that, we saw those deep, warm layer waters really feeding into the system with no upper shear. And man, I tell you what, it just took off. It had all the atmospheric ingredients it needed. There was just nothing there. Even the steering around high pressure, there wasn't even any tug from the low pressure or the cold front coming in from the west. So, again, this has been the year of the ridging, where we've seen storms go around ridges very slowly, and then it finally worked its way up, and now it's on the move. So a lot to be said about tropical cyclone heat potential in the Gulf of Mexico for this, along with Harvey, what happened there. With Florence, different scenario over there, because that storm was heading due west right into the coastline. Those storms tend to push water up into the shallower coastal zone, up in the shelf waters. And then those waters cool. So we get a little bit of cool water upwelling that helps to sometimes get those storms weaker. Now, that wasn't the case with Hugo, because Hugo was on the move. Florence was going a lot slower. So that one had the opportunity to weaken. So yeah, it's definitely, this is a hard one to pin down. I tell you, it's it really comes down to the Gulf waters being so warm and being such an area of surface fueling. We find out more and more about rapid intensification as time goes on, but we know the ingredients that caused it today. It's just amazing to see what happened just even the last 12 hours of the storm. Wow, it really blew up. And I think you're on mute again.
There we go.
That's all right.
Incredible what happens when you click the little button and it unmutes yourself. Hey, so yeah, I mean, it was hard to look at some of those images and kind of just process what you were saying or what we were seeing earlier today when some of those reports came in. Let's bring in Jared here to talk a little bit about Charleston weather, because I know we have a ton of Charleston weather followers, and Charleston, an area that is very vulnerable to significant weather when systems either approach or even sometimes go far west of you guys. On that eastern side, you can sometimes get some surge. Talk about what's going to be expected in the Charleston area through the overnight hours and into Thursday.
Yeah, Ricky, we're heading towards a high tide at the top of the hour, and this tide might not quite get to that 7-foot level. It looks like it's lagging behind a little bit, but it could still generate some saltwater flooding tonight. The good news is right now, looking at the radar, pretty quiet. Good onshore wind. Still, kind of breezy. It's been breezy for the last couple of days. It will continue to be breezy and get increasingly breezy overnight. But right now, so far, so good. Now, that's probably going to start coming to an end here around midnight, 1 o'clock. You look at some of the short-term model projections and you look at kind of where things are, and it looks like we're going to start to see some activity around Georgia. There's actually a few showers coming ashore at Hilton Head right now. This is going to start making its way out of the west into the east, probably midnight, 2 a.m. And at that point, that's when a couple things will happen. One, we're going to start getting periods of rain. Now, Charleston area around the coast, probably not going to get a whole lot of rain. That's one very good thing. The higher rain total is going to be inland, closer to where the center passes. But you could still, we'll probably still see an inch or so in some places, 2 inches in some places. We've had some pretty good downpours today. And on top of that, we may see, just another inch or two of rain. Certainly possible. Winds could kick up to tropical storm force in gusts as these heavier rain squalls move through. So got to watch that. But the other thing that we got to keep an eye on is the potential for nocturnal tornadoes. And we did get downgraded to a slight risk. So that's a 5% chance of a tornado within 25 miles. It's a lot of numbers, but that's very unusual for here. Just in general, we don't normally tornadoes are not something that we normally deal with unless it's a landfalling tropical cyclone or QLCS system. So we've got the former today. We've got a landfalling tropical cyclone. We're in that favorable quadrant. We're going to be in that favorable quadrant through about midday on Thursday. So tornado precautions, thinking about that real quick. Not saying that everyone's going to see a tornado. Very unlikely. Hopefully nobody sees a tornado, but that the potential is there. The wind shear is good. The instability still looks pretty good. And so, we want people to be prepared. So the first thing is, if you've got a NOAA weather radio, that's a great thing to have. Turn that thing up, make sure it alerts, make sure everything is working. You're hearing the transmission, and set it to alert you, so it can wake you up in case a warning's issued. Wireless emergency alerts. We just did a test last week nationwide of the wireless emergency alert system, so you know what one of those looks like. Those are much more commonly used by the National Weather Service for tornado warnings, and so make sure that those are turned on, and make sure that that your phone is not on silent tonight. Yes, it will vibrate like crazy, but there's something about the EAS tone that really gets you going. I have been aroused from a dead sleep by wireless emergency alerts. They work. If you do not receive the wireless emergency alert test, that's your cue to go get an app. Our buddy Eric has Stormwatch Plus, code Carolina. That will alert you to severe weather warnings that are issued for your location. Your local news apps will alert you. You can get whoever your favorite local news guy is. You can get their app, and that will alert you as well. And so there's numerous ways to do this, but you want to have multiple ways to get warnings. With tropical storm force gusts and some rain in the area, the trees can come down, power lines can come down, you could lose power. So make sure that you've got, just make sure you got a flashlight on hand, batteries on hand, just something kind of close. Keep your phone on the charger tonight, and so when the power goes out, you got plenty of charge and you can still make calls, so not too long, and you can still get text messages out and let people know you're okay. Don't think that this is going to be a tremendously high impact event for the Charleston metro area, but it's going to be disruptive. It's going to be annoying. We're going to have another round of tidal flooding tomorrow morning around a little shy of 10 o'clock, probably between 8 and noon. with continued onshore flow and still some lingering perigee tide influences as well. Some astronomical influences that are already enhancing tides. But as far as like a significant surge threat, where we're not really seeing that this time. It's not like Irma. It's not like where we had 4 foot of surge. It's not like Matthew. Nothing like that. But it's going to disrupt travel. I think tomorrow morning's rush is going to be a problem. Schools are closed. So that might be a cue that maybe, if you can telecommute, maybe that's not the worst idea. So all in all, Charleston, I think that, we're going to have a stormy night. You're going to have a stormy day tomorrow. It's going to clear out. It's going to begin to wind down Thursday afternoon and evening. And we've got a beautiful day coming up on Friday. So if we can get through tomorrow, I think you guys are going to be quite pleased.
Jared, a question for you. Have you heard anything about the harbor there in Charleston and any impact that may be on that? One of our viewers said that she's got her family coming in from a cruise tomorrow. I was curious if there's going to be any issues.
Yeah, there's a lot of people coming in on that cruise. I've got a buddy of mine on that cruise who's been giving me updates from that cruise. And from what I understand, they're hauling butt to get back into the harbor tomorrow morning. My advice is I hope they got their sea legs. It could be a bit choppy, this kind of onshore wind. And again, the gusts are, the winds are going to be a little stronger out on the water. There's no land friction there to deal with. So we could be dealing with 45, 50 mile an hour gusts as this cruise comes in. So again, barf bags and sea legs. And that's my best advice, but this is not an Anthem of the Seas situation where they're going to get caught in the middle of a Cat 4. So they should be getting in just fine. And then, periodic rains again, but from what I understand, the cruise is getting in around 6, 7 a.m. So that should be a little away from that high tide. So if they got to get out of Dodge, they should be able to do that. Okay. Just watch out for that wind and watch out for some of that heavy rain. If the rain rates do kick up and kind of persist, then we might be dealing with some downtown flooding issues.
All right. Very
Ricky,
good.
I've got some information on Columbia. I know there's a couple of folks asking about that. If we want to cover that.
Sure. Go ahead. That was going to be my next question.
Okay, cool. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the National Weather Service Columbia and what they're talking about here, and make sure James catches that one on. Okay. Yeah, he's got it on. Okay. So good. This briefing was at 6:00 p.m. tonight, so you may see the winds from the hurricane a little bit higher, but these reports are going to pretty much stay intact no matter what the storm does tonight. If anything, these numbers may come down just a hair by tomorrow morning. We'll see. I think everything's pretty much on track here. Tornado watch is now in effect for Georgia counties. That's in the Georgia counties of the Weather Service zone here. These will continue to probably spread further to the northeast across Columbia in time. Main points of impacts are going to be wind 30 to 40 miles per hour with gusts to 50, tree damage and power outages expected. Flooding rain 4 to 6 inches across the area with locally higher amounts. You may see some areas that get driving rains over them, maybe up to 8 or 9 inches. So be expecting that. Likely longer for river flooding. It looks like this is going to be on the move. The storm, that's the good thing about the storm, is it's going to be on the move pretty quickly. So it's not going to have a lot of time to drop a lot of rain. It's just some areas may get more than others. Tornado threat is there for at least a few tornadoes is elevated. Greatest threat lower CSRA in Eastern Midlands. The timing is after midnight tonight and through Thursday. So through tomorrow is the greatest threat for tornadoes. And again, the Weather Service Office is calling for the nocturnal phase of these events to likely happen more so than in the daytime. And the concern here is that folks may be asleep and not know about it. Like Jared said earlier, please turn on or enable your notifications so that way it wakes you up. Greatest impacts all elevated for inland flooding, tornado, and wind. Let's see here. These are the numbers from earlier from 5 p.m. So we're going to skip down to the wind threat. For most of the area. So the stronger winds. Now, the folks are asking what the deal is with the tornado watch only being on one side. The thing is the eastern and southern side of the system is going to be the strongest. That's where the most southerly convergence coming up into the storm is going to be. And that's where the most activity is going to be occurring as far as tornadic activity and heavier rains. When we get around to the north side of the storm and the western side of the storm, we get this wraparound effect and we get blocking from the mountains. And so we don't have a lot of that rotation going on in the atmosphere. So it tends to break down on the western side of the system, and maybe a little bit of intrusion of dry air pulling into the west as well from the southern Appalachian chain. And so that's why we're likely not going to see any severe weather along the western side of the system. Most of that's going to be limited to the eastern side, which is why the winds are higher. According to this map, 53 miles per hour peak wind gusts for Orangeburg, 52 in Manning. So we're going to see 50s for wind gusts here, and then up near 40 miles per hour for Columbia for peak wind gusts. So that's a point. Everybody in the CAE zone is in a tropical storm watch, tropical storm warning, because you will be seeing tropical storm conditions pretty soon. There's the tornado threat, and the tornado threat is extended through Columbia. As we get to the east, again on that eastern and southern side of the storm, where the potential for several tornadoes is there, and that's where the greatest threat is going to be along this zone on the southern portion of the CAE forecast area. Flooding threat, 2 to 3 inches here. It looks like more rain right down the middle, right where the center of the storm is going through. River flooding is possible into the weekend, and that's going to be from downstream effects from the upstream watershed up in North Carolina and northern South Carolina down into the Columbia area. Flood watches are in effect for all these areas as well. That extends beyond the CAE forecast zone to other GSP, all the way over to Raleigh-Durham and down into Georgia as well. So PD River, I know Ricky's good at this stuff, but PD River is expected to crest pretty high up here on October the 13th, and that's in the moderate flooding zone, flooding stage right there. Congaree also going up as well. So they're expecting some moderate flooding, maybe up towards moderate for the Congaree River at Columbia, but moderate for the most part for some other areas. So make sure you're paying attention to where you live and next to the river systems and finding out what the latest information there is. So I think that covers CAE in a nutshell, guys. Back to you.
All right. I want to answer a few quick questions here on the chat that I'm seeing coming through. Some people asking about the other tropical systems out there. For the emphasis on time, they're not a threat to the United States at all right now. So don't worry about those. Leslie's been spinning around in circles for a long time and should not impact the United States at all. Same thing for Natalie, not expected to be any type of impact here. Asking about Charlotte, North Carolina. Let's bring in Scotty here in just a minute to talk about that. Let's scroll through. Anything else popping up here? I don't think so. So, Scotty, why don't you talk about Charlotte and why Charlotte is not in that tropical storm watch or tropical storm warning? And then if there's no more questions, we'll kind of wrap it up after that.
Yeah, Ricky. So the Charlotte area in western North Carolina is just on the very western side of the track of Michael, not Florence, Michael, and so that's why we're not expecting to see the tropical storm force winds sustain. At least we definitely could see some wind gust. Anywhere between 30 to 35, maybe even a 40 mile per hour wind gust, and that definitely can bring down some trees and power lines with the saturated soil. The main thing for Charlotte, Greensboro, Winston-Salem, Hickory, Morganton, places like that, it's definitely going to be the flash flood threat with an additional 3 to 4, maybe even 5 inches of rain possible throughout the foothills and the Piedmont of North Carolina. That is the main threat that we're worried about. The Weather Service has highlighted that in their latest briefing, talking about the flash flood threat and also the potential. Shay was talking a little bit about the tornado threat, and that's kind of extended maybe into a little bit of the Piedmont of North Carolina. We also have to know that there's a cold front moving through later on or tomorrow afternoon, and that could maybe enhance a little bit of the rain and maybe even produce a few gusty storms that move through here that could produce a potential tornado. So the threat is not zero. It's like a 2% chance. So we say it's a non-zero threat. It's very low, but there is just a slight chance of a tornado maybe forming in the Charlotte area. But again, mostly for Charlotte and points to the west in North Carolina, at least in the upstate, is going to be the chance for flash flooding. And we've already seen flooding in some of our mountain and foothill locations. And as that batch of rain moves up through Georgia and South Carolina, we're definitely going to see that potential. And right here is the risk for flash flooding tomorrow from the Weather Prediction Center is showing a moderate chance. And this is kind of like the severe weather outlook that we look at, except there's only 4 categories here. So the upstate of South Carolina, western North Carolina, that is a level 3 out of 4 for flash flooding. for tonight and tomorrow. So that is definitely the main concern here in Western North Carolina, including Charlotte. So James or Ricky, back to you guys.
All right. Thank you so much, Scotty. Well, here's the deal. Here's what we're going to do for the next little bit here. We're going to continue to monitor Michael as it moves to the north and east. We'll talk about just kind of a summary of maybe the silver lining here of what's going to happen afterwards. And then we'll sign off and keep you updated throughout the overnight with more special coverage if necessary for any severe weather that pops up or things like that. I want to give it to Shay real quick here, because Shay, there is some good news from all of this.
Yeah, there sure is, Ricky. Thanks a lot. One good thing about this, once this system is out of here, like Scotty said, Friday is going to shape up to be a beautiful day, drier air moving into the region. High pressure is building in from the west, and it's driving a nice, cool air mass all the way down into the southeast region. So I'm going to give you kind of a general idea over the next 60 hours what's going to happen here. Now, this is the North American model 3 kilometer, and you can see here our oppressive heat continues in the south, even at nighttime. Or in the late afternoon hours. And I'm just going to go forward on this. So we get out here. This is the next 24 hours right here. Okay. And then we see another pulse of cool air as this high pressure out west pulls clockwise, rotating cool air down into the southeast region. Here comes our next pulse. Look at those temperatures in near 48 hours. We're looking at 69, 70 degrees, maybe 77 along the coastal Georgia area as we get into 50 hours. But that cool air is really going to filter in. So we finally get our first shot of fall weather after this storm. This pushes into Saturday, October the 13th. So just 3 days away. It looks like this weekend we're really going to get a cool spell. I'll run this one more time forward. You can see those temperatures and that cool air really working into the coastline. This is really good news to finally get rid of some of that heat and humidity that we've been dealing with, especially post-tropical storm going through the area. I can't wait. I'm ready for fall, guys.
And Shay, to kind of piggyback off of that, if we look a little bit further on, maybe Sunday night, Monday night, Tuesday night, Ricky, you affected like this as me. There's some of our highest locations in North Carolina mountains could actually see temperatures around freezing. We could actually see our first frost and stuff in portions of the mountains.
I don't know what to say about that. Other than no.
I don't like it. I'm mad.
I was just out in New Mexico the last few days, man. It got cold out there. It snowed in those mountaintops.
Yeah, we're not ready for that. It's going to be honestly, I told a lot of people it's going to be a shock to the system for a lot of us because it's been so warm and humid for so long that this first shot of cooler air coming in over the weekends with lows in the 50s and just a little bit of a breeze, it's going to feel chilly.
Hey, I'm ready to turn the AC off.
All righty, y'all. Well, thank you, everyone who has tuned in tonight for this special edition of the Carolina Weather Group. Here's the deal for the rest of the night. If any severe weather pops up, we'll be back with some coverage of the severe weather. We've got our team here ready to cover any type of dangerous weather that pops up across the Carolinas, North Carolina, South Carolina, maybe even parts of Virginia if necessary. We'll keep you updated through the overnight hours on a potential tornado risk that develops. If a tornado watch is issued, you'll see those alerts posted on our page. And Shay will have some updates, as will Scotty and Jared, on the latest status of Michael as it continues to push off to the north and east. Weakening, but still a storm that poses some threat to the Carolinas and one that you'll want to take seriously over the next 24 to 36 hours. So thanks for joining us tonight. Stay tuned for more updates.